Good evening, Rowan. It's the 19th of March 2017 and it's about 7:45. And obviously this is my usual Sunday evening video to reassure you I haven't been seducing any priests over the weekend, so you can relax. Oh, and by the way, I haven't come out as a lesbian either. So, I thought we could continue our little chat this evening about the lecture that you gave in St. Louis, Missouri on the 7th of March 2017. So, I'm going to talk this evening about the clip I was going to put in my last video but didn't get around to doing it. So, without further ado, here we go. So, you say, this is a question, by the way. You say it's about recruitment of the church. I suppose you mean evangelism or evangelization. I can't hear what the questioner's saying because he hasn't got a microphone. And it also looks like you're even struggling to hear him there. So you say that he's asked a question about recruitment of the church anyway, and that this question is very broad reaching. So you say, first up, I think I'd have to say, in the light of how my talk ended, don't panic. Well, I've talked about you using the word panic an awful lot, which indicates to me that you're in fact panicking. But I think don't panic here makes me think of The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, which is a novel. But anyway, an alien in this novel has the Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy to help him get around the galaxy, and he's also researching and writing it. But on the front of it, it says, don't panic. So that's what I associate this term, don't panic, with. And in fact, it's a very well-known novel and was a TV series in Britain, a radio series in the 1980s as well. And there's been a film made of it a lot more recently than that, so it's a very popular work. So I can't help thinking you might be talking about The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy when you say don't panic, so you may be speaking astrophysically here. And so you may be hoping that saying don't panic astrophysically is going to have some beneficial effect on you. So that was just a thought around that anyway. So you then say, God calls people into the church rather than us, and God has promised that the church endures, and it will. Well, that's true, actually, but you don't believe in God, do you? And you've been acting as a subversive agent. You're an infiltrator, and you've been using deliberate subversive tactics, which you've learnt from intelligence agencies, and in fact they're detailed in the CIA Manual of Simple Subversion, which is declassified and you can read on their website. And I've shown some screenshots of that document before and how it really describes your modus operandi perfectly. So anyway, then you say, park that for a moment, but I think it's important to have that at the back of our minds. It's not all up to us. What can we do? We can work at dismantling some of the confusions that there are in our culture about Christianity. So the use of the term confusion here is quite interesting, because I wouldn't say people are confused about Christianity. You're confused. You're a very confused person. This is because, as I've said before, you believe that the universe revolves around you because you're fixated in a state of infancy. And so when other people don't do what you've decided they will do in your fantasy world, then you're very confused about this. So rather than adjusting your personal narrative to account for the fact that you're not in fact the centre of the universe, you just keep reeling in confusion and making more and more determined efforts to try and force other people to fit into the narrative that you've created for them in your fantasy world. So you use the term confusion here. what can we do? We can work at dismantling some of the confusions that there are in our culture about Christianity. I think there's misunderstandings in our culture about Christianity, but confusion, I don't think is the right word. I think you're talking about your own confusion. Um, so you then say we can lay as much emphasis as we can on the basic nature of gratitude. So I've talked about you using basic before in a sexual context, that you understand it that way and you use it that way, and I've demonstrated that in a previous video. I think that's how you're using it here as well. And when you say we can lay, well, that's a euphemism for sex as well, isn't it? We can you can lay down with someone or get laid. We can lay as much emphasis as we can on the basic nature. So you're talking about sex here, aren't you, and the sexual nature, the basic nature of gratitude. And you emphasise gratitude as well. And I think you're telling me that I need to be grateful for your sexual advances. I always had a suspicion, actually, because you're so narcissistic, that you probably think you're condescending and doing me a great favour in trying to screw me. I always had a suspicion that you felt that way, so you've done me this great favour and condescended to try and screw me. Made this absolutely magnificent offer, and how could I have possibly refused it? Well, obviously, the only reason possible is that it's because I'm a lesbian. So this is why you invented that narrative there, just to try and protect yourself from narcissistic injury. So I always had this suspicion that you thought I ought to be grateful that you'd tried to screw me. And I ought to be grateful that you're still trying to screw me, even though you're the most repulsive excuse of a man I've ever met in my whole life. I can't imagine how anyone could possibly find you attractive. You're utterly vile. I mean, it's not even... I mean, you're a decrepit old fart now, but I've seen pictures of you when you were younger, and to look at, you're absolutely nothing. You look a bit creepy, even just in photos of you, but looks aren't everything. But you've got this hideous character as well, where you just abuse people and try and force yourself onto people and force yourself onto me, and you talk nothing but crap, and you just talk all this arty-farty crap all the time, making stuff up, you're lying all the time, and these things are just completely unattractive to me. Sleaze and corruption just aren't sexy. So you're neither anything to look at, nor do you have an attractive personality, so you've got nothing going for you. And you're telling me here that I ought to be feeling gratitude because you've tried to screw me, and that you're so obsessed with me and so affronted that I didn't accept your magnanimous offer of sex. That you've hounded me around the world for decades. You just can't keep your trousers zipped up, and you can't take no for an answer. You're so pathetic. And I'm supposed to be feeling gratitude that I've had my whole life completely destroyed and been repeatedly traumatised, and now been so traumatised I'll never flame and recover because of these lunatics who think that they're helping me. And I'm supposed to feel gratitude for all of that, that a sleazy old pervert and a sexual predator has just been making my life as much of a misery as he can possibly manage since the first time he clapped eyes on me, and I'm supposed to feel gratitude for that. Look, Rowan, you're a psychopath and you're a sexual predator. Nobody is grateful for that kind of person. You're completely insane. So, we can lay as much emphasis as we can on the basic nature of gratitude in the Christian faith. Gratitude for the gift, unearned, uncaused by us. So you're going to give it to me, are you? And I haven't earned this gift. And I should be feeling gratitude for it. This is probably the most lunatic thing you've ever said, but I did really think, because you've got such a high opinion of yourself, that you probably thought I ought to be grateful. And especially since I'm such trash as well, and you look down at me. I know you look down on everybody, but you think I'm such trash, and a great person like you was going to magnanimously have sex with me, and I should be grateful for that. That's just hilarious. So anyway, you then say we can try to convey the idea that the community, that the churches exists not as a religious club, but as a, and then you give a big sigh, a place where human beings are able to learn what is fully human in relation with God. Well, the Church of England is a club, in my experience, Rowan, and it's a club that exists entirely for the benefit of the clergy, who have to be expressing themselves all the time and tyrannising lay people and ridiculing them. And treating the laity like they're a complete nuisance, like the laity exist for the clergy, when it's the other way around. Well, that was my experience. And of course, it is a club, and it's a club that I was never in. And I'm not talking actually just about being a member of clergy there, although that's a club within a club. It's another level of initiation being ordained in the Church of England. That's my opinion. You're not being ordained to a function in the church, but it's another level of initiation. You're not really the church unless you're ordained in the Church of England. That's my impression of how things were when I was Anglican anyway. It was quite an annoying and ridiculous situation. Um, so the church is a club, the clergy are a club within a club in the Church of England, but even insofar as the wider club, I was never a validated layperson, really. Certainly not in your eyes. I was never in the club, even in the club of the lay people who mattered. This is why you were just having me thrown out of churches, thrown out of the club, simply because I wouldn't kiss the arse of the real club within the club, who were the clergy, namely your perverted pretend astrophysical clergy friend David Pete. So it is a religious club. It's not even a Christian club, it's just a religious club. People who meet together and perform rituals and that kind of thing and talk in spiritual language. So the Church of England certainly was a club in my experience, and the clergy a club within the club. So you're saying the church is supposed to be a place where human beings are able to learn what is fully human in relation with God. So what does that even mean then? It's just an impressionistic statement. It's more of your flowery pseudo-spiritual mumbo-jumbo. We're all fully human at all times. Every human being is fully human at all times and is also in relation with God at all times, unless the person refuses that relation, which is what you do, by selling your soul to the devil. And by persecuting Christians and also people of other religions as well, by telling lies about Muslims and so on. So, fully human in relation with God, we're supposed to learn that in the church. Well, I just learned in the Church of England what it was like to be an outcast and just to be tyrannised and persecuted, just for not kissing the arse of the clergy, basically. Certain members of it, certainly. And that was all at your behest as well, so there we are. So now I've gone off to the Catholic Church and you're acting like dog in the manger, because it's just, as far as you're concerned, I didn't even know you were behind all of this when I left the Church of England. I didn't have a thought in my head about you when I left the Church of England, which is now over 10 years ago, by the way, because it was the beginning of 2007 that I left the Church of England. So that's over 10 years ago, and I didn't even give you a second thought at the time. I didn't know that you were behind all of this. You're not the reason that I left. But now I've found out all about this, I wouldn't have gone back anyway. It really, it was just the last straw in the Church of England. I'd hung in there as long as I possibly could, and when I left, I knew I wasn't going back, and that was it. So because you think the universe revolves around you, absolutely everything has to be about you. So when I left the Church of England, from your point of view, that was another stage of abandonment. I'd refused your sex, I left your diocese, I left the church in Wales and went to the Church of England, and you instigated a lot of abuse of me in the Bristol diocese. I got sick of that, and because I didn't know you were engineering all of this, I just thought, this is all terrible going on in the Bristol diocese. So I moved back to Yorkshire, which I wanted to do anyway. So I moved back to Yorkshire, but you were hoping by causing me all those problems in Bristol that I was just going to run back over the Severn Bridge and throw myself into your arms in Newport, which I didn't know that at the time, and in any case I just thought you were useless, so there was no point asking you for any help anyway. Plus you'd tried to get your leg over, so when I just got sick of all the problems I was having in the Bristol diocese, I moved back to Yorkshire. So that was a further level of abandonment of you, but I didn't know I was abandoning you because I didn't know you were completely obsessed with me. So I've just kept moving further and further away from you without even knowing that you were so obsessed with me, because you were just inciting other people to treat me in a bad way, and you always said that you were supporting me. So I didn't, you didn't support me though, you just said you were supporting me, so I knew there was no point asking you for anything. So from your point of view, it's just been one abandonment after another. I refused your sex, I left your diocese, I left the church in Wales, then I moved from Bristol back to Yorkshire, and then ultimately I left the Church of England to become a Catholic. And all of this is just abandoning you as far as you see it, because you think the universe revolves around you. But actually, apart from leaving your diocese, perhaps, but even then I also had other reasons for going to the Church of England. Absolutely none of those decisions had anything to do with you. It's because you think the universe revolves around you. You see me as abandoning you when I took these decisions that had nothing to do with you. So you then say, you're talking about the church here, try and communicate that a bit better. Oh, so we're talking about the church not being a club and being a place where human beings are able to learn what is fully human in relation with God. And you say, try and communicate that a bit better, and we probably fail and go on failing, but we have to try, and we have to try in a spirit that is, dare I say, almost light-hearted. I'm not sure what you're talking about trying to do here, because what you're trying to communicate about the church here and about God here is just a lot of pseudo-spiritual mumbo-jumbo, and you're going to keep on failing. Well, you deliberately fail, don't you? And you sabotage people who are succeeding or who may succeed, and this is all your plan of deliberate subversion. So we have to do all of this trying in a light-hearted way, rather than, oh God, if we don't get it right this time, the church will collapse. Doesn't that grasp at our hearts again and again? Well, since it's your intention that the church will collapse, or should collapse, then that's certainly not grasping at your heart, is it? It's grasping at your heart when you don't succeed in making the church collapse instantly and go along with the globalist agenda that you're always promoting. And also, of course, be worshipping and adoring you, because the universe revolves around you and you are, in fact, God in your own estimation. So you then say, if we don't do it defending God from the consequences of God's own recklessness. Oh, so we're supposed to be defending God from the consequences of God's own recklessness. Well, I'm not defending God from anything. I don't defend God. God doesn't need defending. But I am defending other people from believing the heresy and satanic doctrine that you promote, the non-Christian ideas that you promote as Christianity, and also by drawing attention to your deliberate subversive efforts, not only in the church but in society as a whole. So I'm not defending God, I am simply pointing out all the lies that you tell about God and about Christian faith, and how the lies that you tell fit in perfectly with the globalist agenda, particularly of a one world religion, of environmentalism and earth worship, and I've demonstrated that in quite a lot of videos now. So I'm not defending God, I'm defending other people from believing the garbage that you talk. So you then say, we should oh yes, we should stop defending God from the consequences of his own recklessness. But then we say, okay, let's try this. Oh, sorry, no good. Let's try that. Let's see if we can do it better. Let's see if we can, for once, convey to the world around us that the defining characteristic of Christians is not panic and paranoia. Well, if you really wanted to promote the gospel and preach the gospel, which you don't, but let's assume for an insane moment that you were trying to do that, what you really need to do is experience conversion yourself. You need to be evangelizing yourself with the gospel, Rowan. Turn to Christ and repent of your sins. Stop lying all the time. That's the main thing. I've told you that before. Concentrate on that. Concentrate on not lying all the time. That's where you need to start. And never mind trying to convert anyone else to anything, because you do nothing but lie, and you're not converted yourself, so you're utterly unconvincing. And people can't become Christians on the basis of you preaching the gospel, because you never preach the gospel, you just make up your own mumbo jumbo. So convert yourself first, or allow yourself to be converted first, and stop fretting about other people, the vast majority of whom are in a far better spiritual state than you. Let's see if we can, for once, convey to the world around us that the defining characteristic of Christians is not panic and paranoia. Well, you're panicking and you're paranoid because you think everybody who shows any competence is going to exterminate you. And this is why you have to go around eliminating the competition all the time and complaining about competition and people being competitive, even though it's you who's competitive. But you don't want other people to be competitive because you can't compete. And there's a lot of false information presented about Christianity in the media, and people have very ignorant ideas about what it is to be a Christian. So when this agenda, anyway, of subverting traditional religions and particularly attacking Christians and Christianity in the West, when this has been promoted by the globalists, that's really the thing that needs addressing: globalist anti-Christian propaganda, and the way that secularism is promoted in Western society as if it were objectivity when it isn't. It's simply another belief system. And atheism is another belief system, and Darwinism is another belief system. And these are all things that are promoted as if they were the only rational option, when in fact they're just simply another belief system. So it's quite hard to get across the idea that the defining characteristic of Christians is not panic and paranoia if they're generally being promoted that way in the education system and in the media. So it's an uphill struggle, and of course lunatics like you don't help, do they, when you're doing everything you can to subvert Christianity and also other traditional religions. So you then say, can we do that? Well, we can try, I think, and then maybe people will see, yes, there's a certain amount of freedom goes with this. There's a certain amount of joy goes with this. If we don't communicate that joy, we might as well go out of business. So you've been talking about basic and lay and that kind of thing earlier on, and I've previously mentioned in a video that you also use joy in the context of sex as well, and I demonstrated that by showing a lecture that you'd given to the lesbian and gay Christian movement in 1989, where you were using the term joy in relation to sexual pleasure, really. So I think that's what you're talking about here. And also, I mean, this word freedom that you emphasise, I don't know whether you're talking about freedom for you from prison, or freedom for me from all this constant harassment and abuse that you're having me subjected to try and force me to accept your perverted sexual demands. So you might be talking about that. But anyway, when I was editing my video and I decided to use a clip from a WHAM song called Freedom, it was the first thing that came into my head. It was a very popular song in the 1980s, and it was played all the time on the radio. And if you went to a club or a disco or something, they were playing this song. Anyway, when I listened to the whole song, I think you actually might be referring to this song. I'm not a WHAM follower, actually. I was far too cool to like WHAM. Just like I was far too cool to want anything to do with you. I'm still far too cool to want anything to do with you, to be honest. But anyway, so since you've got a tendency to quote song lyrics, I thought you might be referring to this WHAM song, even though I've not used WHAM before. But anyway, here we are. So here's the song. Every day I hear a different story, people saying that you're no good for me. Saw your lover with another and she's making a fool of you. If you loved me, baby, you'd deny it, but you laugh and tell me I should try it. Tell me I'm a baby and I don't understand. Well, that's exactly what I've told you. This is what makes me think you're referring to this song. It could have been written by you. So you then, the song then says, this is the chorus. But you know that I'll forgive you just this once, twice, forever. 'Cause baby, you could drag me to hell and back just as long as we're together. And you do. So that's the end of the chorus again. And the chorus is repeated several times, but I'm only going to read it once. And then it says, I don't want your freedom. I don't want to play around. I don't want nobody, baby. Part-time love just brings me down. I don't need your freedom, girl, all I want right now is you. And then I think the chorus comes again after that. And then it says, like a prisoner who has his own key, but I can't escape until you love me. I just go from day to day knowing all about the other boys. Oh, you're jealous of my beloved, aren't you? Well, he is so wonderful and we're made for each other. Haven't even mentioned him in this video. I'm really looking forward to dreaming about him all night long tonight because he's just so wonderful and sexy and handsome, and he's nothing like you at all. And I can't stop thinking about those magnificent feet. We just can't wait to be together in each other's arms on our bed of roses, having a really good time. Once you're out of my life forever, it's going to be wonderful. Anyway, this song goes on. Take my hand and tell me I'm a fool to give you all that I do. I bet you someday, baby, someone says the same to you. And then several times it says, you're hurting me, baby. Over and over again it says that, and the chorus a few times. So I just thought you might be quoting from that song, since you seem to have got quite into pop music and rock music lately. I never had you down as a WHAM fan though, but there we are. Anyway, I'll show some clips of that song in a minute. So you say, that song's called Freedom. So then you say, once we do all of these things about not being paranoid or something in the church, people will say, yes, there's a certain amount of freedom goes with this. There's a certain amount of joy goes with this. And if we don't communicate that joy, we might as well go out of business. So you might be talking about sex there. Go out. If we don't communicate that joy, we might as well go out of business. Isn't that something prostitutes say? Do you want the business? I think it is. So, is that what you're talking about then? Well, you'd know all about that kind of thing, wouldn't you? Because you've had so much involvement with it. Anyway, that's all I'm going to say about that video this evening, but I am going to make a couple of comments in a minute about some things, quotations from you that were posted on Facebook yesterday because you were leading a spiritual retreat for Lent yesterday. So I'll talk about that in a minute.
Please.
Thank you for coming and speaking last night. This experience, every Christian church I've been in, I'll see a declining level of age group adults. Where are we going to get new young people to take our place?
Well, there's a nice broad question about the recruitment of the church. First up, I think I'd have to say, in the light of how my talk ended, don't panic. I think I'd have to say, in the light of how my talk ended, don't panic. God calls people into the church, rather than us. And God has promised that the church endures, and it will. Now, park that for a moment, but I think it's important to have that in the back of our minds. It's not all up to us. What can we do? We can work at dismantling some of the confusions that there are in our culture about Christianity. We can lay as much emphasis as we can on the basic nature of gratitude in the Christian faith, gratitude for a gift unearned, uncaused by us.
But Christianity's record in this, as I don't need to remind you, is a bit uneven. And it's something to do with the fact that quite early on, Christianity did internalize some very negative attitudes to bodies as such, and therefore to bodily functions like sex. The overvaluation of reason or intellect in some people's writing and thinking in the early church meant that sexuality was a deeply problematic area. You never quite knew what was going to happen. And St. Augustine has an extraordinarily candid discussion of why this is difficult. You never know, forgive me being basic, you never know when you're going to get an erection, says St. Augustine, and your will doesn't manage this side of your experience. He's talking about men, of course. That's, again, no surprise in the era. You never know what's going to happen. You never know quite where your body's going to come round and surprise you. And that means that this is a dangerous area. And therefore, you need to treat it with enormous caution. And that feeds into a general Western Christian unease about all this, an unease about body, passion, loss of control. You could say the very area of self-surrender, which St. Paul sees as positively significant, becomes in later writers an area of danger. Self-surrender, letting go, is what you mustn't do.
We can lay as much emphasis as we can on the basic nature of gratitude in the Christian faith, gratitude for a gift unearned, uncaused by us.
Give it to me, baby, like boom, boom, boom.
We can lay as much emphasis as we can on the basic nature of gratitude in the Christian faith, gratitude for a gift unearned, uncaused by us. We can try to convey the idea that the community that the church exists not as a religious club, but as a place where human beings are able to learn what is fully human in relation with God. Try and communicate that a bit better, and we'll probably fail and go on failing, but we have to try. But we have to try in a spirit that is, dare I say, almost light-hearted, rather than, oh God, if we don't get it right this time, the church will collapse. Doesn't that grasp at our hearts again and again? Oh, if we don't do it, defending God from the consequences of God's own righteousness. But then we say, okay, let's try this. Oh, sorry, no good. Let's try that. Let's see if we can do it better. Let's see if we can, for once, convey to the world around that the defining characteristic of Christians is not panic or paranoia. Let's see if we can, for once, convey to the world around that the defining characteristic of Christians is not panic or paranoia. Can we do that? Well, we'll try, I think. And then maybe people will see, yes, there's a certain amount of freedom that goes with this, a certain amount of joy that goes with this. Then maybe people will see, yes, there's a certain amount of freedom that goes with this, a certain amount of joy that goes with this. And if we don't communicate that joy, we might as well go out of business.
So I'm just going to talk about a couple of these quotations now. There were quite a few quotations tweeted, but I'm just talking about these two that were put on Facebook now. By the way, the photo of you in the last video was taken at the retreat that you were giving yesterday, the 18th of March 2017. So here's what it was reported that you said anyway. We cannot have a preconceived list of places we won't go, or issues or people we won't engage with. Well, I haven't got a list of places, a preconceived list of places I won't go, or issues or people I won't engage with. You see, the thing is, Rowan, I did engage with you, didn't I? And look how you treated me. And I also engaged with David Pete, and look how he treated me. So the thing is, if I engage with someone and they treat me in a bad way or in an abusive way, then I've learnt that it's not a good idea to engage with that person. So if I'm not engaging with you, Rowan, that's because of your behaviour and your attitude. And that's how it is. I do not wish to engage with people who treat me the way that you treat me and try and force me to do things that I don't want to do and try and force themselves on me and into situations that I don't want to be in as well. So I haven't got a preconceived list of places I won't go, or issues or people I won't engage with. But equally, I now have quite a lot of life experience, so I can often see where an issue or a person is going quite early on in an interaction. So I decide to disengage myself from that at an earlier stage than I would have when I was younger. That's due to what I've learned throughout my life. So it's not a preconceived list, it's a list based on experience, and I continue to add to the list as I continue to assess situations that I find myself in and people that I end up engaged with in various ways. Right, so here's the second and final quotation I'm talking about this evening. We should not be anxiously trying to be responsible for everything and fix the world, but rather be attentive to the here and now, asking, what is the claim on my love? So I'm not anxiously trying to do anything. You're very anxious, and you've talked about anxiety an awful lot on videos on YouTube. So I've talked about that before. So you're anxious, not me. You're panicking, not me. And I'm not trying to be responsible for everything and fix the world. I'm simply drawing attention to the globalist takeover bid and your part in it by providing propaganda and acting as a subversive agent in church and society. So that's what I'm trying to do. You, by contrast, have talked about saving the world several times. I can think of twice off the top of my head in your amazing parody of the story of Noah, for example. You talked about saving the world in that. I've already made a video about that. And also at the launch of Eco Church at the beginning of 2016, you were talking about saving the world then as well. So it's you who thinks you're fixing the world. This is because of your narcissistic delusions, and you actually think that you're God. You've got this messiah complex and everything revolves around you and everyone needs you. This is because you're a covert narcissist. It doesn't have any basis in reality. In fact, you're a millstone around the neck of the human race and a subversive agent. So we should not be anxiously trying to be responsible for everything and fix the world, but rather be attentive to the here and now, asking, what is the claim on my love? So you're talking about being attentive to the here and now. I've talked about this before as well. You want me to be focusing on the here and now, so that I'm going to think, oh, you know, everything's terrible, there's nothing to look forward to, I can't take any comfort from memories, I've got good memories or anything like that, or draw any strength from the way my characters develop through experiences I've been through in the past, or any insights as to how best to cope with difficult situations. I shouldn't be focusing on the past and doing that. I shouldn't be focusing on the future thinking, oh, well, it might get better, things might improve, this might end, and in any case, I've got heaven, eternity to spend in heaven with Christ and the saints. So I shouldn't look forward to any positive outcome of any kind at all, either in this life or in the life to come. You want me to be focusing on now, on the negative things now, so I'll be overwhelmed with despair, and this will make me more malleable to your perverted purposes and intentions towards me. So I've talked about that in videos before, and I think that's exactly what you're doing again here and now, so to speak. So I know exactly what you're playing at, Rowan, and I wouldn't be taking any advice from you anyway. You being fixated in a state of infancy, a psychopath, and having sold your soul to the devil. And an Illuminati shill. So anyway, so I should be attentive to the here and now, asking what is the claim on my love. Well, you haven't got any claim on me at all in any respect. You've got no claim, you've got no rights. And when you say love, you actually mean vagina, don't you? You're not talking about love, you're talking about sex. So what you're saying is I should be focusing on the here and now, asking what is the claim on my vagina. Well, absolutely nobody has a claim on my vagina. It belongs to me, and it's up to me to decide whether anyone else gets access to it or not. And I have decided that you are not having access to my vagina, Rowan, and neither is your perverted astrophysical clergy friend, and nor will I be coming out as a lesbian and sharing it with any women either. And I'm saving myself for my beloved anyway, obviously, and his magnificent feet, because he's so wonderful and we're made for each other. So, you don't have any claim on my love. You don't have any claim on anything to do with me. You're absolutely irrelevant and you're nothing to do with me. You're just pathetic. And in any case, let's talk about love in the wider context. Let's talk about parental love for a start. So, I am behaving in a loving way towards you in a parental sense because I'm setting appropriate boundaries for you. I'm not letting you get away with your obnoxious behaviour and your petulant toddler tantrum and your foot stamping, trying to get your own way, demanding your own way, and being manipulative and coercive as well. So I'm setting boundaries and I'm not putting up with this bad behaviour. And I'm also telling you how you can attain salvation as well, that you need to turn to Christ and repent of your sins and stop telling all these lies all the time, and particularly stop pretending you're a Christian when you're obviously not. So that is a loving way to act, to tell you the truth about things, and to set appropriate boundaries for you because you're incapable of doing that yourself because you're fixated in a psychological state of infancy. So I'm setting the boundaries because you're incapable of that. You're not mature enough. So these are loving things to do, and if you can't appreciate that, then that isn't my problem, really. And you're not defining what is loving for me and what is virtue and all of these things because you're a psychopath and you've sold your soul to the devil, and I will not be paying any attention to a single thing that you say because I know you're only trying to save your skin and ruin me. So anyway, so that's the end of my comments on the quotations from the retreat that you gave yesterday. So these are other people quoting you, so if you didn't say those things, well, it's not my fault. They're saying that you did, so you need to take it up with them. Anyway, I certainly will leave it there because I want to be going to sleep and dreaming about my beloved all night long, obviously. Because he's so wonderful and we're made for each other. But I will be turning up to arrest you on Tuesday in Leicester when you're giving a lecture there. In fact, my beloved's going to drive me there because he doesn't trust you at all. So he's going to karate chop you if you try any hanky-panky. So you better be watching your P's and Q's. And there's no point putting your clown shoes on either because I won't be impressed. And I'm surprised you want to be away from your wife anyway. Maybe she's going with you because maybe you'd miss each other, or you'd miss her once she's run off with her Rastafarian boyfriend. Unless, of course, she's coming to the lecture with her Rastafarian boyfriend as well, because he doesn't trust you either. Anyway, I will leave it there because I need to get to my sweet dreams as soon as possible. But don't forget to be alert on Tuesday. Hasta el martes.
live the World Trade, long live the King, yo. I'm from the Empire State. That's
She's got both hands. She's got both hands.
And late that night when the Lord came home, inquiring of his lady, the servant said on every hand, she's gone with the raggle-taggle gypsies,
The footman memorized the number, but the prince still holds both the slippers. A new dream of Paris for a bed-sit and Canterbury tales.
Don't try to change me, you're wasting your time. Now I got something much better in mind. Robert De Niro's waiting, talking Italian.
Why Catholics have the best sex.
Oh, what care I for my house and my land? What care I for my money? Oh, I'd rather have a kiss from the wild gypsy's lips. I'm away with the raggle-taggle gypsy. I'm away with the raggle-taggle gypsy. I'm away with the raggle-taggle gypsy. Oh.